Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We've got another great guest with the Veterans Wealth Network. His name is Scott Halsey, and he is the owner of Whistletop Brewery. As usual, I've got my partner in crime, Nick Roop, with us. And we really loved talking to Scott because not only was Scott a Marine, but he serves in the Guard. He's got a brewery, and he's really done a lot to help his community. We felt like he has a great message to share with everybody. So with that said, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Let's get started.
Scott, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you guys?
Doing well. Appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Absolutely.
Scott, I'm so excited to hear about your business. We talked briefly beforehand, and just hearing your background, your story, the way in which you've cultivated and built this thing out, challenges that I don't know many other business owners have faced. Literally restructuring laws in order to bring your business to light, right? So, for the benefit of everyone, do you just mind sharing out what is your business and where are you at? Who is it that you're serving?
No, it's a small brewery here in tiny Cornelia, Georgia. We just enjoy serving the local community as best we can. Constantly doing stuff with the local VFW and American Legion. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. And for someone that's looking up the brewery, or let's say they wanted to stop by, what's the biggest town or city that's nearest to?
I guess Helen will be the nearest landmark. Helen, Georgia. It's kind of the little Bavaria, little Germany town. They got the world's largest or longest Oktoberfest every year. So it's
Wow,
kind of cool to be part of that. But
Especially if you're a brewery.
right.
Oh yeah. Definitely didn't hurt any.
That's fantastic. And Barry, I know he mentioned it at the introduction here, but you served in the Marine Corps to start, and then ultimately you got out, right, and made a transition back into the military via the Army Guard. What led to you joining the Marine Corps in the first place, though, Scott?
I was just kind of always brought up with that mentality that my dad bestowed on me about every young man should serve his country. And then honestly, it came down to when I was graduating high school, we were going into a recession, and it just financially made sense to kind of go wait it out in the military. So,
did you always want to be a Marine, though, or like what led to the Marine Corps of all the branches?
The joke that I like to tell with that is that I had to one up my dad because he was in the Army. But in all honesty, I mean, the recruiter's pitch worked for me. I was an Eagle Scout, and at the time, I had just finished up with that, and they were talking the honor, the courage, the commitment thing, and I know the courage part actually just really stood out to me over the other branches. So it's kind of where that ended up. But, yeah.
And what were you doing while you were in the Marine Corps, by the way?
I was actually an aircraft mechanic. I worked on F-18s. Was shipboard for most of it on the Enterprise. So
that's awesome. So naturally, the skill set you gained working on planes, right, naturally translated over into owning a brewery.
Oh yeah, of course. That was handling all the hydraulic stuff. It's no. Obviously, the military doesn't have a brewing program.
They have a drinking program, though.
Oh yeah, I have plenty of those. But I don't know, just kind of this is the story of how the idea. We were coming off of a rescue operation. We had to go get a jet that had gone down in country, and we're authorized to have a couple of beers, and we're sitting around just talking about what we wanted to do when we got home, and then what we wanted to do when we got out. And I was at a complete loss. I had no idea, no other plans for my life at the time. And I just kind of looked down at the beer and was just like, I'm going to start a brewery. Why not? And then it kind of stuck, and all my friends kind of held me to that. And I follow through on it.
That's fantastic.
Had to do a lot of learning along the way.
Well, and one of the things that I've heard from others that have gone off and started breweries, right, is, hey, it started off as kind of a side project, maybe a hobby of mine. They might start brewing on a small scale, but it doesn't sound like that's what you did, right?
No, I did start at a small scale, but I started with the full on all grain brewing. I skipped the whole extract or the whole brew in the bag stuff. And a lot of it, they don't make a lot of the equipment, or they didn't at the time. Most of that equipment they don't make on a small scale. So I had to build my own
Wow.
out of coolers, and you can find all sorts of instructions on the internet on that. It's kind of cool, but you get really ingenuitive with it. But the ultimate goal all along, even from the very get-go, is to eventually do this, to start an operational commercial brewery. So,
And so from the point of idea, like sitting down, having that beer, to the point of, hey, now we have a business, right? What was that timeline?
So that was, I guess it was on my second deployment in 2012 when that idea came through. We opened, it was April-ish of 2012, if I remember right, and we opened a little over about 2.5 years later, toward the end of 2014. So it seems like a very short time now. I'm thinking about it.
But you blink, especially when you're in the thick of things, right? Trying to learn all these different things from, like, now all of a sudden you find yourself having to be a CEO, COO, CMO, right? CFO, like, list goes on and on and on. When you started, though, one of the things you'd mentioned was the brewery itself. Like, you weren't even going to be able to do it where you're located right now. Can you speak on that a bit?
So the initial idea came through, and we started doing some research on it, and realized that our local laws would, it's still a dry city. In fact, the county itself had just very recently started allowing alcohol sales on Sunday afternoons, and it was interesting to say the least. We had to I sat down with the city council and with the city attorneys, and we had to rewrite all of the laws, which, as I mentioned before, and led to a full rewrite of the entire city ordinance, to all the way down to changing sign laws and everything. So it's been interesting the past few years here in the city.
That's incredible. And I imagine that wasn't just limited to impacting you. It sounds like that's spread, and ultimately others have been able to reap the benefits of that change too.
Oh yeah. We've gone from, was it 8 years ago now, from being a completely dry city with no alcohol sales at all, to now we've got 3 restaurants with bars. I actually just heard about another one last night that's supposed to be opening sometime next year. I think they're aiming for next summer. But yeah, plus the brewery, of course, and we've even got an outdoor bar with an open carry ordinance. As long as it's in a plastic cup, every day of the year you're allowed to walk around. So just stay in the downtown area. So
that's a big step. It blew. God, I missed maybe 30 years ago. I went to Alabama, and it was dry in Decatur where I was, and my then wife's family would, were bootleggers. They would run up to Tennessee and bring back, booze, and they were making moonshine, and it's just so trippy that the whole country is drinking, but in Alabama, I just couldn't wrap my mind around. If the people that are watching don't know this, there still are dry counties in the United States, and where you cannot buy alcohol unless you're doing it illegally. So that's a trip that this just 8 years ago. This was the case in Georgia. There was it in the entire state of Georgia or just in your county there?
Just in this county and this city in particular. I learned through that the local laws can be more strict than the state laws or the county laws even, but they can't be any looser unless you're in the downtown business district, and then they can get away with almost anything they want to. It's kind of weird, but
So you had a couple challenges going against you. I mean, the challenge of just getting started into business for yourself is tough enough as it is, but actually changing laws and going up against, the local, I'm sure, do you think it was difficult? Were you having to twist a lot of arms? Did you run across, a lot of prohibition minded kind of people who are like, no, we're not going to have any alcohol, or was it pretty much, yeah, it's about time somebody, decided to change the laws? What kind of challenge was that, Scott?
Most of the actual lawmakers and the guys in charge were pro. They were like, cool, let's do this. It's about time we made some changes. And just said it led into the full ordinance change. They're like, well, we're at it. Let's tack on all this other stuff. There was a little pushback from some of the local communities. Some of the local churches weren't happy about it. My dad and I, as we've been in this community for, I'm the fourth generation at this point, and we were approached by other people and the same that have been here forever, known the family forever, and they just kind of came up to us in the hardware store one day. I remember that particular, and just asked, how do you justify this? Like, how do you justify making a living off of someone else's sins? And I was like, well, show me where it's a sin.
If I remember correctly, drinking was all over the place in the Bible. That kind of blows my mind. Well, speaking of your dad,
if I remember,
from what I understand,
wine.
Well, speaking of your pop, you said that, we always like to talk about mentors, and you said that your pop was, probably the biggest mentor you've had in your life. Why don't you tell us a little bit about him?
Well, he, as I alluded to earlier, he was in the Army. He actually retired from the Guard 4 years ago. And yeah, he's had a long career there. He was also a business owner. I learned a lot of what I do from him as far as the business goes, as far as the military goes, as far as he's just always been in my corner, no matter what. And we're talking about that with the mentorship and how a lot of the stuff I learned from the military was actually started with my dad. The classic example of that is, and you guys could know this too, is as soon as you get on the rifle range in boot camp, one of the first things they asked us was who's familiar with the rifles, who shot before, and you raise your hand. They're like, all right, forget everything you know. We're going to start from scratch. And we get there and they reteach you everything. And as I'm going through it and they're reteaching us all this stuff, I'm like, this is exactly what my dad told me. This is word for word exactly how my dad taught me to shoot. So, and it was that way with a lot of stuff in the military. I was like, wait, my dad already told me this.
I'm sure he loved hearing that too, right?
Oh, yes. He still does.
Well, aside from your pop, you also mentioned that one of the things we like to find out from the people we interview is, who in your past, specifically in the military, but it doesn't have to be in the military, who kind of mentored you along the way. A lot of times we're being mentored and we don't even realize that we're being mentored. We just look back on it and go, thank God that person was in my life, because I don't think I'd be the same person. You mentioned that you did have a couple of really strong mentors. Who were they?
The first one was I had a master gunnery sergeant who was there. And it was one of those, like you mentioned, at the time, I didn't realize it was mentoring. Looking back on it, the guy probably saved my military career and probably saved me from making a lot more mistakes. But at a time when I was getting in a little bit of trouble for some underage drinking, and he just took me under the command at the time was a stickler for that, and kind of literally threw the book at me. And he just kind of took me under his wing and just guided me through the whole process. I can remember the day that I was actually going through everything, getting in trouble. He just kind of pulled me into his office and sat me down on a sofa that he had in his office. And instead of sitting at his desk, he sat down next to me and just like, all right, man, what's up? And we just talked through it. And yeah, that was really cool, especially having someone of that high rank just kind of right there next to me. Saying it's going to be okay. And he stayed that way. Actually, I had him pin corporal on me when I picked up, and then picked sergeant again. I came down from another base, and that was fun.
Awesome. And you had another one too, if I remember correctly. It was a SEAL, right?
Yes. He's a retired SEAL commander. His name's Mark Devine. He's written several books. He's the founder of the Unbeatable Mind program, also founder of SEAL Fit. And yeah, I still in contact with him every now and then. As a couple months ago, we spoke on the phone together, and he's a great guy. Highly recommend looking into some of his books to anybody. So.
And how did that interaction start? I mean, getting the attention of a SEAL commander, I would imagine, isn't the easiest thing to do. What exactly happened there? Did you accidentally ram into his Jeep or something, or did he just what happened?
Not quite that bad. His SEAL Fit stuff had just launched, and I was getting ready for some specialized training and wanting to get in better shape. So I was looking into that online, and on a whim just emailed him and introduced myself and ran with it. And he emailed back almost immediately. It shocked me. And first I was thinking, this is a form, especially as quick as it came through. I was thinking it was kind of a form letter or something. It definitely wasn't him. But the more we emailed back and forth, I realized that it was actually him emailing me, and he ended up sending me a copy of one of his books through PDF format, and just like, here, just check this out. While you're doing that, here's a bunch of workouts you can do to get in better shape. And
Wow.
And it just, yes, very helpful. Walked me through the schooling process and the training. It was nice.
That is nice. So let's see, Nick.
I was just going to ask. Obviously, like the mentors that you've had, the time that you spent in the military, Scott. How has that experience ultimately translated into your business today? What do you find yourself doing that you were doing in the military as a business owner?
The biggest thing that's helped me is the discipline, being able to keep a schedule. Even if it's a day like Mondays or Tuesdays when the brewery is closed, and if I'm completely caught up on everything, I still come in and keep some business hours just to keep myself in that habit.
Yeah.
Even if I end up sometimes sitting here and watching a soccer game or something, like at least I'm here.
Yeah.
But that's probably the biggest direct translation. There's other stuff as far as conducting myself in a professional manner while I'm meeting with the lawyers and whatnot. They're trying to get the laws changed. There's all sorts of little small ones. And we also spoke about the strive for continually bettering yourself and the eternal student mindset. And so that was something that was huge for me, still is. I'm still constantly trying to learn something new. I'm as I mentioned, I'm currently teaching myself Russian just to keep my mind moving on something, whatever's next. But as far as that goes, we want to learn directly from the sources. So I sought out the guy quite literally wrote the textbook that all of the schools that are offering brewing programs or fermentation science programs or whatever. He's Dr. Michael Mosier. He's actually teaching at the University of Northern Colorado. And I, through the GI Bill, was able to pack up everything I own and drive out to Colorado and learn directly from him. So
That's
Nice.
incredible. That, it's one thing that we hear a fair amount, right? Folks, especially those that are successful, there's just this passion for continuing to sharpen their skill sets, the development, and it ties right into one of the Marine Corps leadership traits, right? Know yourself and seek self-improvement.
yes.
And so it's not surprising to hear you say it, but also just it is nice to hear and continue to be affirmed, because again, it's something that Barry, I know you leverage yourself. You're always learning and you're always staying up to date on news and books, and yeah, exactly right there in the spirit of it right there. The book Atomic Habits I sent out to him. And I'm in the very similar situation, right? I think that there's an internal drive that each of us have to be the best at what we do. And it's not from an arrogance, right? It's just simply the pride that we want to have in the work that we do. And it's a representation of us, right? I was going to ask too, Scott. So obviously taking that skill set, applying it to the military, like you've been doing this for a number of years now, right? Like this isn't your first rodeo. It's not your first year in business. You've survived a pandemic, which is incredible, right? Well, let me ask, if you were to go back in time, let's say you're starting back over from scratch, what is a lesson that you've learned along the way that you wish you would have known when you started out?
I guess the biggest one is that you can't do it alone. You've got to have somebody in your corner, even if it's just your wife, your girlfriend, whoever, like being the cheerleader in the background, pushing you, giving you that drive. It's almost impossible to do it alone, and it's something that I know they teach the team mentality in the Marine Corps, and it's one of the things in boot camp. They don't allow us to use personal pronouns. It's always third person stuff in it that actually breaks you down and forces you to think in that team mentality. And without having some sort of team, you can't build much of anything. You've got to have a very wide variety of skill sets that can't be done by one person. And I kind of wish I'd realized that sooner and held on to some of those teammates.
I think also, I was going to say something corny like there's no I in team, but the reality of it is that it's not just about, having the support. I think when you talk about surrounding yourself with other people, whether they're cheerleaders or whatnot, I think it's that, sometimes, the road to success is a long journey and you do not feel like you're getting anywhere. There's sometimes, you feel like, if anything, you're taking some steps back. I feel so bad for my son when the pandemic hit. He was by himself in his apartment and didn't go anywhere for 2 months. I'm so fortunate that I do have people and my wife, and Nick reached out to me during the pandemic. That's when we first met, and we Zoom each other every week, just if anything, just to check in with each other. But it's that constantly, trying to come up with new and fresh ideas of how to help each other. That mentorship, and Nick is young enough to be my son, but I mean, I look to him for guidance, and there's many times that he's called me and asked me my opinion, and I don't care who you are, I don't care how bright you are, you just aren't going to have all the answers, and sometimes you think that doing things a certain way is the right way to do it. But now you've got somebody in your life that you can check in with and they go, you know what, that's a great idea, but why don't you think about doing it this way too? It just gives you, to your point, I think, Scott, it gives you, like a group of cheerleaders and psychiatrists, psychologists, and business planners, and all in one group of people. It's just super important just in life in general. So if you're serving right now and you're getting out and you're watching this, man, Nick and I did a video just how important mentorship is. You don't need to have those people directly in your life to be able to get that mentorship. In this day and age, it can be over video, just like we are right now. So yeah, I agree with you there, brother.
Go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to add a quick quote, and that was the one that really hit home with me about having the team and having not being able to do it all by yourself like that. Was I was reading a book by Robert Kiyosaki, who's also a Marine, but he one of his books, I don't remember exactly which one, or rather I've read several, but he said that if you're the smartest person in your business, you're doing something wrong. So you should continually surround yourself with the mentors, with the people who are smarter than you, better than you are at something. So
100% agree. There's a book by Dan Sullivan, Who Not How, right? And it's the thing that's been replaying as we've been talking about this in my head. It's impossible, to your point, Scott, to be the expert at all things, right? And early on as an entrepreneur, you kind of have to be. But that being said, like you can find gaps, right? And you can find opportunities to plug someone else in that's going to free up your time. They're going to do better at it than you're ever going to do in the first place, right? And now you have free time that you can now dedicate to something else. And so long as you're making some margin in that relationship, I think that's a big win. And a lot of folks get scared by that. One of the things, though, separate from that it's just been playing in my head the entire time we've been talking. I don't know if either of you can relate to this or not. I will say that it was a personal experience of mine going through the entrepreneurial journey. But entrepreneurship can be lonely, right? We talked about mentorship and having that. But there's also something like no one really talks about, I think. Faking it till you make it. Like you got to pretend that everything's okay, even when the room's on fire, right? You can't let everyone else know that things are going awry. You have to maintain face. Has that happened to you? Like, have you experienced that at all, Scott?
Oh, yes. Quite a bit, actually, especially during the pandemic. That was incredible. But something that another entrepreneur shared with me while I was in Colorado, actually, he said that the best way to keep that in mind is most people think that you have to do the thing to have what you need to be the person you want. And that's actually completely backward from the way that it legitimately works. You have to be that person in order to do the stuff to have what you want at the end. So
how have you done it? How have you leveraged that? I think that's so insightful. Like, is there any tidbit of advice you'd give to someone else that, like, all right, how do I actually apply that to my life, though?
I mean, the old adage about dress for success, like be that person. And obviously you don't have to dress that way all the time, but just in your mind.
By the way.
I think also, that fear and insecurity is the thief of opportunity. you know, before I was in the Marine Corps, you know, I mean, if I didn't know how to do something, I would just go, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. Like, you know, but after I joined the Marines, it was like, there was nothing I would say no to. It was like, you know, I started a fan convention for the band Tool, and I'd never done anything. I'd never done an event. I used to sing in metal bands when I was young, but I never did anything like that. And people were like going, "Are you crazy? Like, what makes you think you can do this?" And I'm like, I can do anything I want if I put my mind to it. I mean, what you don't get, you know, and I think that I learned this in the Marine Corps, and you guys will probably agree, is that the hardest part is just stepping off the platform, man. Because once you get moving and things start getting thrown at you, you just deal with them as they come along. Even if it's something that, you know, where maybe it costs you some money or something, you go, okay, I'll take that. I'll learn from that, and I'm moving on. And my whole career has been like that. To Nick's point, and to your point, I mean, I'm a loan officer right now. I didn't ever plan on that when I was in the Marine Corps. I was also a gallery director at Georgetown Galleries in Washington, D.C. Marine Corps didn't help me with any of that. I used to sell precious metal leverage contracts. Marine Corps, but what the Marine Corps did is it just gave me the confidence that if I just stepped off the platform and committed, I was going to figure it out. And that is one thing that I can tell you I was not innately born with. That was something I have to credit my serving in the Marine Corps with.
Oh, yeah. I could definitely second that from my perspective too. I remember in high school, I played football. Everybody in the South did. It was just what we did. But
giving cows and playing football, that's about all there is.
Right. But yeah, I can remember being asked by coaches if I wanted to step in to a position, I'd hesitate, and before I could even answer, they'd pick somebody else. Just, I mean, that's who I was at the time, and now, yeah, absolutely, it's the other way around. It's like you want to try it, sure, let's go. Why not?
Is there anything we forgot about that we should be talking about right now, or do you think we pretty much covered it?
Nothing comes to mind at the moment. I mean, we've had some great conversation.
I agree. Well, guys, Nick, love you, man. Thank you for doing this with me. And Scott, we're so happy that that you were willing to do this with us. And, you know, we consider you part of our family now. So don't be surprised if I call you up and ask you to loan me some money. I'm just kidding. But we would like to check in with you, like, you know, from time to time. And if you have something really cool that comes up, you know, let us know about it. We'd like to share it with everybody. What can us as a community, whether you're active duty or a veteran, what could we do to support you? Like, aside from buying your beer, and what could we do? Is there anything that you'd like us? Are you looking to hire some more veterans? Are you looking for somebody to help you with, you know, your taxes? Or are there any challenges that we as a community can help you with?
I mean, I'm always open to hiring someone to help me with the brewing process in particular. It's something that, I mean, it's kind of my specialty, but it also is the most time-consuming part of all of it. And yeah, I mean, taxes suck. So it's I'll take any help with that I can get. So
yes. Well, thank you so much, Scott. And did I just cut you off? Were you going to say something else, bro?
I was just going to mention advertisement too. Like, if sharing our posts on Facebook, Instagram, social media, it's been the biggest thing. So
that was going to be my next thing that I was going to wrap it up with, is that we want you to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. But also, like, if you are somebody who's watching this video on one of the social media platforms, even if this doesn't necessarily apply to you, forward this over to another veteran, or forward it over to somebody you think would just enjoy listening to this. And, you know, support Scott's Brewery. Scott, you're on all social media platforms, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you at on Instagram and Facebook, and you have a YouTube channel?
I don't. Somebody has actually mentioned doing that recently, so something we'll probably look into. Yeah, we've got a website, we've got Instagram, Facebook. It's just Whistle Top Brewery, Whistle Top Brew Company.
There you go.
Those, so.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. And you know, I'm clearly wearing about as Christmas of a sweater as you could possibly get. So this is right before the holidays. I hope you have a wonderful holiday. But if you're watching this after the holidays, just pretend like it's next year. So thank you so much for joining us, Scott. Thanks, Nick. And guys, we'll see everybody hopefully soon. Like, subscribe, hit that bell, and don't forget to please support Whistle Top Brewery.